Hey everyone, Howie Fisher from Fisher's Flies. Thanks for checking in. Today I am tying up a staple Euro Nymph pattern Duracell jig. If you've never fished one of these, I highly recommend it. It's a super effective pattern. To get started in the vise, I'm using a fulling mill jig force hook in size 16, paired with a fulling mill slotted tungsten bead in 2.8 millimeters silver. For my thread today, I'm using UTC 70 denier in brown. You can also use purple if you'd like, since the majority of the body is purple as well. I'm going to go ahead and get started with my thread right behind the bead and take a bunch of wraps to try and lock it in place or prevent it from moving as much. And right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and grab my tail, which is CDL and dark Pardo. You can use whatever color you'd like. This is just the color that I prefer. I'm going to go ahead and strip off about half a dozen to a dozen fibers from one of the CDL feathers. Again, use your preferred amount. And I'm going to go ahead and measure this about the length of the hook shank and switch fingers. I'm going to go ahead and give 3 or 4 wraps and make sure that tail is the length that I want it. If I need to make an adjustment, I can do that right now before taking a bunch more wraps to secure this. I'm going to go ahead and snip my butt ends off. And I'm going to reach for my wire. So I'm using Sybai flat wire, which is a really cool product in medium red. And the reason why I'm tying this in now, I'm trying to keep this body as thin as possible. So I'm not going to wrap all the way back to the tail. I'm going to wrap both of these materials backwards all the way to the bend of the hook at the same time. This is, again, just a personal preference. You can do each material at their own time if you'd like. For the dubbing today, I'm using Tactical Microflash in Violet. This is one of Fulling Mill's newest products. I'm going to go ahead and create a little dubbing noodle about 2 inches long, should do on a size 16. Pretty thin. Remember, less is always more when creating a dubbing noodle. Again, in order to keep the body slim, I like to tie both the tail material and the ribbing in at the same time so that I can just get started with the dubbing right from the back. Once I've got my dubbing noodle, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it to behind the bead, and then I'm going to go ahead and counter wrap my wire to make this fly a little bit more durable. This isn't completely necessary, but again, it'll add durability to the fly. Once I'm done securing the wire, I'm going to go ahead and helicopter this off. Next, I'm going to grab my collar material, which here I'm using CDC feathers from Hemingway in natural gray. I would recommend something along these lines, but use whatever CDC feathers you have in a natural gray or natural brown color. To prepare my feather, I'm going to go ahead and use one of my Stonfo clips, which is very similar to a chip clip, but use whatever you have. And I'm going to go ahead and secure just one side of the feather in there and snip those fibers free from the stem. I'm then going to go ahead and flatten out my wire and do a split thread dubbing loop. If you need some instruction on that, I do have a video linked on my YouTube that explains this in a little bit more detail. I prefer this method versus wrapping a feather around the collar. I feel you get a little bit more control. And you get to use the whole feather rather than just one feather per a fly. So I'm going to go ahead and insert those fibers and then spin my bobbin clockwise to cord that up. And I'm just going to go ahead and take wraps with that feather, stroking backwards with each wrap. Lastly, I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit more of that Tactical Microflash dubbing from Fulling Mill and make a small dubbing loop on the front end, and this is just really to clean up the head and push those fibers backwards. Then I'm going to go ahead and whip finish with a 2 or 3 turn whip finish and snip my thread free. And lastly, on all of my flies, I do like to hit it with a little bit of UV resin, Solarez bone dry, just added durability for any fly. I highly recommend using something along those lines to make your flies last longer. But there you have it. This is the Duracell jig. Again, super effective in proving your Olympic pattern.